When I put people in a performance methodology of maybe testing or qualifications or running a match, I often see very good shooters do the one thing that they've been schooled their whole life not to do, is they stop seeing the front sight. They don't see anything and they just shoot the gun because they're so worried about points or time or what everybody else thinks or how they're going to do. They stop looking.
The Mantis X10 firearms performance system is an invaluable training tool for shooters of all levels to make themselves better with their defensive firearms.
Hey everyone, welcome to Mantis Dry Fire Monday. This is Active Self-Protection Extra, and I'm Brian Hill with the Complete Combatant. I'd like to talk to you guys today about how the rules work in shooting and life in general. Oftentimes, as we start our training, we have to have absolute rules. Whether it be in martial arts, whether it be in firearms, whether it be in driving, we're going to have absolute rules, all right, that cannot be broken. You have to do this all the time. So one of the absolute rules in the firearms world is you have to see your front sight. And it's a good rule, right? Because what are we telling the beginner? You need to see something. You need to visually confirm that the gun is pointed in the direction you wanted it to go. And that works really well for the beginner, all right? The sacrifice is it tends to be very slow at certain positions. All right, so we're trading accuracy for time. All right, but we know in the real world we can't trade up all the time in the world. We've got to have accuracy and speed at the same time. So now you get to the intermediate training level and you realize at 3 yards or maybe 5 yards, if you just get that gun out and you see the back striker plate of the gun, you can hit the target. Okay, I'm not really seeing the front sight, but I am shooting the target. All right, and then we say, well, you always have to see the front sight until we do retention shooting. Then you can't see the front sight. We do compression shooting. You can't see the front sight. So there's visual alignment and there is kinesthetic alignment. And there's some gray. So that absolute now at the intermediate level, it can be broken occasionally. So now we got to teach the person when it's okay to break the rule. All right. It is okay in the world of law to break the rules. It's called the law of competing harms. If we take a double yellow line, we're never supposed to cross it when we're driving, but yet we all do. All right, if we're not paying attention or you got a big truck like I do, it's really easy to float across that. Some places like where I live in the mountains, you know, they grade the yellow line so your tires start going when you get on it, and that reminds you. Some new cars have cameras and they'll bump you back into the lane, or we just simply realize we've gone too far over. All right, now could that be catastrophic? Yes, but most of us get away with it. Okay, now should I ever cross the yellow line? This is a discussion that you'd have with a new driver. They're driving down the road and they could not stop because a child is in that lane and they shouldn't be there. You could simply go across the yellow line if no cars were oncoming, miss the child and come back in, because it would create a greater harm to hit the child than it would be to break the law of the double yellow line. So there's no absolutes even in the legal field, nor is there in shooting. As you progress, you'll be able to do shading, bending, or understanding when to skip things. Now, checklists are a great thing for the beginner because they raise your competency. Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Not bad for the intermediate if they can internalize them. All right. Where they start affecting people is when they get to the advanced or the expert level, because those people simply don't need a checklist. They need to confirm that they're seeing what they're seeing. So is their recognition of the pattern complete, or does it need to be affected? All right. What I mean by that is if I draw the gun and I'm ready to shoot, the expert doesn't see the sights, he'll simply correct it and shoot. Cost him about a 0.2, all right? The beginner would shoot, look at the target, come back, and then fire the gun, and that would cost him 1.5 seconds. The intermediate person might be at 3/4 of a second or half a second to make that correction. All right, the expert would do this. Simply expects to see the gun, the sights. If they're there, he'll press the trigger. If not, he makes a correction. If anything's changed, he takes his finger off the trigger. He could skip any part of those things. Could be seeing the sight so quickly that he doesn't have to confirm it. His mind is an intuitive pattern recognition machine. And if he can believe in himself that he's done it enough over and over that that is a good enough alignment, then he can shoot. But the only place to develop that is in practice. So I tell people this all the time. You must miss in practice. You must go too fast to miss. You must do things that aren't quite right. As long as the berm accepts your miss and you don't send it over it, that's fantastic, because we want to miss where it's safe. We don't want to miss in real life. When I put people in a performance methodology of maybe testing or qualifications or running a match, I often see very good shooters do the one thing that they've been schooled their whole life not to do, is they stop seeing the front sight. They don't see anything and they just shoot the gun because they're so worried about points or time or what everybody else thinks or how they're going to do. They stop looking. So they didn't have an overriding goal. Now, I'm going to get something out you guys probably haven't seen on this channel. Brian Hill with an iron-sighted HK VP9. Let's make sure this thing is unloaded. Looks good to me. Looks good to y'all. Nothing in it. Okay, why the iron sights? Well, Brian Enos talked about iron sights quite a bit in his book. So he's a great expert. If you haven't read that, you got a Zen mind like me, you'll enjoy it. If you're a complete logical person, it'll drive you a little bit insane. That's okay. All right, maybe it'll make you stretch a little bit. So he talked about 5 degrees of vision with this, from an absolute hard top, sharp edge front sight focus to just seeing the target. So what that means is somewhere along that line, we're not seeing as much as we originally thought. I may just frame the gun at 3 yards and press the trigger, all right? Or at 25 yards, I'll see the top edge. Or at 10 yards, I'll be looking at the target more and just seeing this. I've heard some really good shooters talk about the ability to accommodate their vision about halfway between the target and the front sight. Rob Latham talks about this, Gabe White talks about this. Now that never worked for me. One of the reasons it didn't work for me is I can't do it. I have tried and tried and tried. And speaking to people that are experts in the visual world, they say it may be a particular process of not having the muscles relate to the eye in the right way, something like that. So it didn't work for me, it works for them. What always happened to me whenever I shoot iron sights is I see 2 rear sights or 2 targets, depending on how hard I am in that front sight focus. So what do we all end up doing? We close our supporting eye, our non-dominant eye. We just turn it off. Either we close it, we put a piece of tape over it, or we do it. And then we have mono vision, where it's only one signal, okay? And we try to line everything up in a straight thing. We look at the back sight, the front sight, the target, and come back and forth. We get in eye sprinting and we look at the target for verification. But we know it's not the best way to shoot. 2 eyes open is better. The greater our peripheral vision is, the better people shoot. We tend to get in that foveal cone. We're in hard front sight focus. I found people that see more shoot better because they're really good at aligning things. So find out where the rule of vision begins to break down. If you're a beginner, stay with front sight focus. I'm not saying not to do that. Intermediates, you need to start working a little bit between target and front sight. All right, advanced, you should be practicing at how the size of the target changes on how much you need to see. Because the size of the target is the most important thing. Not distance, nothing else. How big is that target? So how much do I need to see? And in the experts, you'll find that you can gray and shape these edges and push a little bit harder than you were before. You need to know the constraints of your vision and your sight system. Now the wonderful thing about a red dot is we can see the target, all right? But I'm going to tell you the truth, guys. My iron sight shooting got better after I spent about a year with the red dot, because I accepted something that I couldn't accept before, that the sight is always in motion. It has never stayed still. I never have a solid front sight focus. I have a moving thing. It's always moving like this. And when you get on your Manus, if you watch it, it looks like a little butterfly flying around with too much energy. It's never quite still, but it doesn't go in a circle. It doesn't make a figure 8. And then it stops. Now, when we shoot, if we just let it settle, we can shoot. But if we pull down, we change everything. So my vision was always tracking movement. Well, I'm pretty good at that. I'm a martial artist. Something we taught in martial arts is look past the person so you can see them in their entirety. Made it much easier for people to hit small targets. All right, small targets like the solar plexus, like the floating rib, okay? Like the outside of the peroneal nerve. Those things are small targets for us to hit. You know, the corner underneath the ear and the jaw, these are really small targets, and the other thing's moving all the time. So if we soften up our gaze, we could hit it better, because your brain is a pattern recognition machine that works on intuition and not logic. So you got to start practicing, and you need to know, all right, I didn't see enough, or I saw too much. If you look at the Codex of Cognitive Biases, one thing that really sticks out is people either have too little information or they have too little time. You're on one or the other. If you have too little time, you won't see anything. If you have too much information, you'll be indecisive and you simply will not press the trigger, and when you do, you'll move it anyway. So see the sight in motion, watch for the streak. When I shoot an iron-sighted pistol, I shoot it just like a red dot now. Pretty much target focused. I don't have to have a clear front sight. I have a fiber optic, or I have something like this pistol. It has a nice green front sight on it there that you can see, Okay, so I shoot that like a dot. I watch it go up and down, up and down. All right, and I'm looking primarily at the target. Now, when I get to a certain distance, that has to change, but you need to figure out what that distance is for you. Okay, so there it is. When do we break the rules? The rules tell us what we can't do, but they also tell us what we should do. And we have to know, in the contextual relativity of shooting, do I absolutely have to follow this rule, or can I bend it just a little bit? All right, do I absolutely have to see that front sight clear, or could it be blurry in the front and the target was clear? Managing people is different than target shooting. It always has been. All right, and your vision is a big part of that. The more you can get information from opening up both signals of your stereoscopic vision, the better shooter you will be. Okay? The argument always comes from the absolutists, because they frame a question like this: well, do you either look at the front sight or not? Depends. Depends on how big the target is. Don't get trapped in those arguments, because they're making you choose a side. Don't choose a side. Choose performance. Get better at what you're doing. Hit the target sooner. You have no choice between accuracy and efficiency. They're both on the table. You have to train both of them. You need to do a good shot sooner, and you certainly can, because there's really no time limit on the function of the human brain. We can really do things very quickly, all right? But it makes us uncomfortable because we either feel indecisive or impatient. I hope that helps you out, guys. Get on your Mantis, watch it track. That's what your aiming process looks like. That's how much your front sight moves. It never stays still. Even after you press the trigger, it keeps moving. Then go shoot it in live fire and see how it works out. Do the same thing, get another source of information and track it. All right, guys, subscribe to the channel. Lots of great information coming from different people on this channel. Active Self-Protection Extra. Hit the like button, leave a comment. Somebody will get back to you as soon as possible. All right, if you need to contact me directly, you can get me. I'm at The Complete Combatant. All right, and as always, measure, refine, and perform.